On the left hand side is the old forge and the kilns which dried the grain that went to the mill, which is the building up further on the left. On the right hand side is Pat Briardy's house, the bridge, and Janie McEnroe's walls. In front now is the mill, that's the kiln and the forge. That's part of the forge, and the kilns is there. The grain was dry. There was two big furnaces at either end, and the grain was dried and then taken to the mill to be ground. On that, the bridge is Nan Cunnine. That's Pat Briardy's house, and that the further up is McGarry's. That is Nan Cunnine. The mill wheel, where the ramper came, and when you lifted the sluice, it turned, the water went into the wheel and turned it and worked the mill. Going in is Nan Cunnine. To look at the wheel, that's the sluice where the water went into the wheel and turned it. That is McGarry's slaughterhouse. Tony McGarry's father had a butcher shop, and that's it. Standing in the door is Mrs. McGarry, Tony's mother, and one of his sisters. That is the mill. It was working in those days, but in the summertime when this was taken, of course the mill was idle, but it worked all winter, grinding oats mostly. That is Granny Reed's shop window, or kitchen window, looking out to the street, and that is Granny Reed's house. Granny Reed herself is there with Fergus when he was, what age was he? 10 or something. Auntie May with the two Alsatians, Rolf and Jessie, the stable, and the other that's where they used to play handball. And the big house, as we called it, and the post office, the Chapel Road, the garden wall. On the corner is a tree. Oh, you've gone by it now. The tree which Richard Brinsley Sheridan is supposed to have tied his horse. The Rockhouse gate and the walls, much bigger. Pappy took them down, and they're smaller now than they were. They're much bigger. The chapel and the school in the background. Note all the trees. Peter Goldick's house. Well, Peter Goldick was Tommy Goldick and Mary Ann lived. We used to call it Mary Ann's in those days of 1938. Sutherwood growing up at the bedroom window. Back to the Rockhouse gate. The chapel, which hasn't changed over the years, except that when you come here, is the coach house, what was known as the coach house, where the priest kept his horse and coach. But the old school, which was then in use as a school, the top school, the chapel once again, the bottom school and the top school. The top school was for small children and the bottom school was for the bigger ones. This was Reynolds's house. Sergeant Reynolds lived there. Beautiful house it was. Later Johnny Hark's, and then the Foxfield Mushrooms. The crossroads with the whitethorn tree, and Reynolds's planting in the background, where Philip Kiernan's house now stands. Note all the trees on the road. There were elm trees all down the road was lined with elm trees. The Cat's Cross, supposed to be a man killed by wildcats. This was the gate lodge into Omert House, where James E. Leddy now lives, and that was the Duck House. It was a beautiful thatched house down the avenue, down to Omert House. Lime trees on the avenue. The fields at the side of the lawn, it was called the lawn. The big ash, the great big ash, and the hen houses where I used to be fascinated with the incubator and the small chickens in it. Every house, of course, had hens in those days, but they were much more scientifically looked after there. The coach house down at the end of the avenue, the house itself, which was not the home of Nan Patrick and Nanny Lynch, home was down in the yard. The yard, a well-designed yard as it was in those days. Very few yards as good as that one. The granary. Steps up to the granary. A lovely shed. Up the hills to the lake. The lake would be up on the left, Omert Lake, and on the right was the bog. In those days, everybody made mud turf was made in the bog, and there it is with Nicholas Sheridan and Mrs. Cunnine. They are in the bog, and you can observe that there are quite a few people working in the bog in those days. It's now the forestry, but quite an amount of people were working in the bog at that time. Mud turf was much harder made than slain, because it had to be mixed, and that is the lake, Omert Lake, I think. That is definitely Omert Lake, and it's called Omert when you look at it from Omert. People call it Kinnaleg when you come out the green to it.